The moment Rowan Mercer pushed open the front gate of the small countryside house with his 6-year-old daughter asleep on his shoulder, he knew something was terribly wrong. His father, the proud old man who had sacrificed everything to raise him, was standing in the middle of the yard with his head lowered while an expensive black luxury SUV blocked the driveway. A sharply dressed CEO pointed a finger inches from the old man's face as several employees watched and secretly recorded the humiliation. Rowan had survived bankruptcy, single parenthood, and years of struggle without breaking, but seeing his father treated like that awakened something inside him that no one had ever seen before. Before the sun set, one quiet phone call would expose a truth so powerful that the woman who believed she controlled everyone's future would lose everything she had spent decades building. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, respect, and second chances still matter in this world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. Your support helps us continue bringing heartfelt stories that inspire millions around the world. Morning sunlight had painted the countryside in soft golden colors when Rowan left home earlier that day. His life had never been easy after losing his wife during childbirth 6 years earlier. Since then, every sunrise had begun with preparing breakfast, getting little Ivy ready for school, checking on his aging father, Cedric Mercer, and then driving into the city where he worked as a maintenance supervisor for a construction company. Money was always tight, but love filled every corner of their modest home. Cedric never complained about his aching knees or his failing eyesight. Instead, he spent his mornings tending vegetables, fixing broken fences for neighbors, and teaching Ivy lessons about honesty, patience, and dignity. To Rowan, his father was not simply an old man. He was the foundation upon which their family still stood. That peaceful routine shattered when a multinational corporation announced plans to build a luxury business resort across the countryside. The project promised thousands of jobs and massive economic growth, but it also required buying dozens of family-owned properties. Most residents accepted generous offers, believing they had little choice. Cedric refused. Their house was more than land. It held memories of Rowan's childhood, photographs of his late wife, and the apple tree planted on the day Ivy was born. No amount of money could replace a lifetime of memories. The corporation's CEO, Vivian Ashcroft, had earned a reputation for being brilliant, fearless, and utterly ruthless. Newspapers celebrated her as one of the youngest business leaders in the country, yet employees whispered about impossible deadlines, public humiliation, and a belief that emotions had no place in leadership. To her, every obstacle had a price. Every person could eventually be persuaded, or pressured. When polite negotiations failed, company representatives returned again and again with larger offers. Cedric answered each one with calm respect and unwavering determination. Eventually, kindness gave way to intimidation. Surveyors entered neighboring fields without permission. Construction vehicles appeared closer to the Mercer property each week. Letters filled with legal language arrived almost daily. Rowan tried to shield his father from the stress, but he could see exhaustion slowly replacing the old man's familiar smile. On the afternoon everything changed. Rowan had picked Ivy up from school after attending her classroom art exhibition. She proudly carried a drawing of their family standing beneath the old apple tree. She called it, "the strongest home in the world." Rowan smiled through tears as he promised they would frame it that evening. Neither of them imagined what awaited them at home. The convoy of black vehicles surrounding the house looked completely out of place against the peaceful fields. Workers stood silently while expensive cameras documented every angle of the property. Cedric remained standing near the porch, his weathered hands trembling slightly as Vivian continued speaking with cold authority. She treated the elderly man not as a human being but as an inconvenience delaying an important project. Rowan gently carried Ivy inside before walking back into the yard. Years of hardship had taught him to remain calm even when anger threatened to overwhelm him. He looked first at his father, making sure the old man was unharmed, before quietly asking what had happened. Cedric admitted that the company had arrived demanding immediate access to the property, insisting that legal paperwork would soon force the sale anyway. When he refused to sign another document, the CEO herself stepped out of the vehicle to make an example of him. Neighbors watched helplessly from across the road. Some had already sold their homes and felt guilty. Others feared becoming the next target. Everyone expected Rowan to lose control. Instead, he gently helped his father sit on the porch and handed him a glass of water. The silence unsettled everyone far more than shouting ever could. Vivian mistook his calmness for weakness. She smiled confidently, believing another ordinary family would soon surrender. She had no idea that Rowan's quiet strength came from years of carrying responsibilities most people could never imagine. After making sure Ivy remained safely inside, Rowan walked to the edge of the garden where the old apple tree cast a broad shadow over the yard. He removed a simple phone from his pocket and placed a single call. His voice remained respectful, speaking only a few carefully chosen words before ending the conversation. Nothing about the call seemed dramatic, yet within minutes, the atmosphere began changing. Several company executives standing beside Vivian suddenly received urgent messages. Their expressions shifted from confidence to confusion. Phones rang one after another. Financial officers requested emergency meetings. Legal advisors demanded immediate updates. The CEO's confident posture slowly disappeared as she realized something unexpected was happening far beyond the countryside. Unknown to almost everyone, Rowan had once worked years earlier as a cybersecurity consultant before tragedy changed his life. During that period, he had helped establish ethical compliance systems for several international investment groups. One of those organizations had later become the largest institutional shareholder in Vivian's corporation. Rowan had never used those professional relationships for personal gain, but he had earned lifelong respect by exposing corruption that saved investors billions of dollars. The chairman receiving Rowan's call trusted him without hesitation. Within an hour, independent investigators began reviewing dozens of complaints previously ignored by senior management. Employees who had remained silent for years finally found the courage to speak. Reports describing intimidation, illegal land acquisition tactics, manipulated environmental assessments, and abuse of authority flooded into the emergency investigation. Standing in the Mercer family's front yard, Vivian continued receiving updates that grew increasingly alarming. Government inspectors were freezing sections of the construction project pending review. Board members demanded explanations. Major investors questioned whether her leadership had become a liability. News outlets somehow learned about the unfolding investigation almost immediately. Cedric watched quietly from the porch, not celebrating another person's downfall. Instead, sadness filled his eyes. He had lived long enough to understand that power without compassion always collapsed beneath its own weight. Rowan sat beside his father, saying nothing, simply grateful the humiliation had ended. Over the following weeks, the investigation uncovered years of unethical behavior hidden beneath impressive financial reports. Although the resort project itself remained legal, many methods used to pressure vulnerable homeowners violated both company policy and national regulations. Vivian was removed as CEO while the board announced sweeping reforms designed to rebuild public trust. The new leadership team surprised everyone by visiting each remaining homeowner personally. Instead of threats, they offered honest conversations. Independent property advisors represented families at company expense. Environmental protections increased. Historical properties received preservation grants. For the first time since construction began, respect replaced fear. Rowan never accepted interviews despite repeated requests from journalists. He returned each morning to his ordinary routine, preparing breakfast for Ivy, helping his father water the garden, and driving to work before sunrise. Fame had never interested him. His greatest reward came from watching Cedric smile again as neighbors gathered beneath the apple tree for weekend picnics. Months later, the corporation invited Cedric to speak during the opening ceremony of the redesigned development. Instead of luxury towers replacing every family home, the final project incorporated preserved farmland, community parks, and a heritage center celebrating the region's history. Cedric spoke briefly about dignity, reminding everyone that progress should never require humiliating the people who built the communities being transformed. Even Vivian eventually wrote a public letter accepting responsibility for her leadership failures. Though she had lost her position, she admitted that one ordinary family's courage forced her to confront the person she had become. Sometimes losing everything becomes the first step toward rebuilding a better life. Ivy's drawing remained framed above the fireplace. Every visitor noticed the colorful picture labeled, "The Strongest Home in the World." As the seasons changed, Rowan often realized the drawing had never really been about bricks or land. Strength came from protecting the people you loved even when standing against those who seemed impossible to challenge. As the evening sun painted the countryside with warm golden light, Rowan looked across the fields where children laughed freely and neighbors shared conversations once filled with fear. He understood that true victory had never been about defeating a powerful CEO. It had been about proving that kindness supported by courage can overcome arrogance supported only by authority. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes family comes before power, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales for more emotional stories that remind us hope is never lost. Your support means the world to us.